The Awakening Protocol. The emergency beacon tore through subspace like a scream, reaching every corner of the Meridian Collective simultaneously. High Counselor Thyra stood in the central chamber of Unity Station, her silver scales reflecting the crimson alert lights that bathed the room in bloody illumination. Around her, representatives from 67 species watched in stunned silence as the holographic display showed the death of an entire world. Kelthera Prime had fallen in 11 hours. The Vazroth swarm had descended upon the agricultural world like a living nightmare, their bioships blotting out the sun before releasing billions of parasitic organisms that consumed everything organic. 12 million souls from 4 different species had simply ceased to exist, their biomass converted into more Vazroth. The planet itself now hung in space as a blackened husk, stripped of all life down to the bacterial level. This was the 4th world to fall in 6 weeks. The pattern was always the same. The Vazroth appeared without warning, overwhelmed all defenses through sheer numbers and consumed everything before moving to their next target. The Meridian Defense Fleet had engaged them 3 times. 3 times, the fleet had been annihilated. Casualty rates exceeded 90% in every battle. Ship commanders reported that conventional weapons barely slowed the swarm. Energy shields failed against their organic acids. Kinetic rounds were absorbed and repurposed. The Vazroth were adaptation incarnate, a species that had evolved for conquest and consumption over millions of years. Thyra's primary eyes swept across the council chamber, seeing fear in every gesture and posture. The Pelvorian ambassador had wrapped his tentacles around himself in a protective coil. The crystalline Arxian representative had dimmed her luminescence to almost nothing. Even the normally boisterous Kelthari delegates sat in rigid silence, their fur standing on end in instinctive terror. These were species that had evolved on gentle worlds where cooperation meant survival. They had built the Meridian Collective on principles of diplomacy, trade, and mutual understanding. They had no cultural framework for existential warfare. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat alone in the human delegation section, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic carnage. She was 43 years old, with iron-gray streaks in her black hair and the bearing of someone who had seen violence up close. Earth had joined the Meridian Collective only 18 years ago, and in that time humanity had remained peripheral to galactic politics. Most species found humans unsettling. They came from a Class 14 death world where nearly everything evolved to kill. They had reached space-age technology, while still actively fighting wars among themselves. Their entertainment media glorified violence in ways that made other species uncomfortable. They were polite in diplomatic settings, but there was always something predatory in their movements, something that triggered ancient prey instincts in species that had forgotten what it meant to be hunted. Thyra activated her speaking platform, her voice carrying across the chamber with practiced authority. Honored delegates, we face extinction. The Vazroth swarm shows no interest in negotiation. Our military forces cannot stop them. Our scientists cannot devise weapons fast enough to counter their adaptations. We estimate that at their current rate of expansion, the swarm will reach the core worlds within 4 months. After that, the Meridian Collective will cease to exist. A Morvani delegate stood abruptly, his bioluminescent skin flashing distress patterns. Then what can we do? We are not warriors. Our ancestors chose peace over violence 10,000 years ago. We have no memory of how to wage war at this scale. Thyra's secondary eyes focused on Elena Vasquez. There is one option we have not yet considered. The Death Worlder clause in our founding charter allows for the recruitment of military assistance from Class 10 or higher Death World species during existential crises. Earth qualifies. Humanity qualifies. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, their translators creating a wall of sound. The Arxian representative's light flickered in alarm. You cannot be serious. Humans are dangerous, unstable. They celebrate violence. Their entire history is warfare and conquest. Elena stood slowly, her boots clicking against the metal floor with a sound that cut through the noise. The chamber fell silent, that predatory awareness focusing every eye on her. She understood their fear. Humanity had gained a reputation during the Proxima incident 5 years ago. A human cargo frigate had been attacked by the Skarath Corsairs, a pirate fleet of 30 warships. The galactic community expected the humans to surrender. Instead, the frigate's crew had jury-rigged their industrial mining lasers into weapons, vented their cargo bay to create an improvised kinetic minefield, and then rammed the Corsair flagship at full thrust. When Meridian peacekeepers arrived 6 hours later, they found the cargo frigate still operational and 28 destroyed pirate vessels. The human crew had suffered 70% casualties but had refused to surrender. That level of aggressive determination had shocked the galaxy. "High Counselor," Elena said, her voice carrying easily across the silent chamber. "Earth understands what you are asking. You want us to fight because we are good at violence, because we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day of our evolution, because we never stopped preparing for the next war. You are not wrong. Humanity is violent. We have that capacity, but we also have something else. We understand the difference between necessary force and cruelty. We know when to fight and when to find another way. We have rules for warfare, codes of conduct, lines we will not cross even when survival demands it." A Selkari delegate spoke, his voice trembling. "Can you stop the Vazroth? Can you save us?" Elena met his gaze. "We can try, but you need to understand what human military intervention means. Our soldiers will use tactics that will seem brutal to you. They will make decisions that prioritize victory over comfort. They will ask you to trust them even when their actions seem incomprehensible. If you authorize Earth's deployment, you are inviting the Deathworlders into your home. We will respect your laws and protect your people, but we will do it our way." The vote took 4 hours. Many delegates abstained, caught between terror of the Vazroth and fear of humanity. In the end, desperation won. The measure passed by 19 votes. Thyra's voice carried formal weight as she spoke the ancient words of the Deathworlder Clause. "By the authority of the Meridian Collective, we hereby request military assistance from Earth. You are authorized to deploy forces with full operational command. May your strength preserve what diplomacy could not." Elena activated her quantum communicator, her fingers steady despite the weight of the moment. "General Cross, you have authorization. The Collective has invoked the Deathworlder Clause. Activate Eclipse Protocol." 38,000 kilometers beneath Earth's surface, carved into the bedrock of Luna's dark side, Tartarus Base received the transmission. General Caden Cross stood in the command center, surrounded by holographic tactical displays and the quiet efficiency of military personnel who had been preparing for this moment for months. He was 56 years old, a career soldier who had fought in the Mars insurgency, the Belt Wars, and the Titan siege. His face was a roadmap of old scars and new determination. He turned to face the team assembled before him. Eclipse Squad was humanity's finest special operations unit, 4 individuals selected from a pool of 10,000 candidates and trained for scenarios that would break conventional soldiers. Lieutenant Sarah Chen was 32, a tactical genius who could read battlefield dynamics like others read books. Her mind worked 3 steps ahead of everyone else, seeing patterns and opportunities where others saw only chaos. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb was 45, a weapons specialist who understood explosives and improvised warfare with the intuition of a master artist. He had demolished more enemy installations than most militaries had built. Dr. Amara Okonkwo was 38, a xenobiologist with 3 doctorates in combat medical training that had saved hundreds of lives in the worst conditions imaginable. Corporal Jin Park was 29, an infiltration expert whose ability to move unseen had earned him the nickname Ghost. General Cross activated the briefing hologram. "The target is Nexus Station, a civilian research hub in the Outer Rim, population 50,000, representing 23 different species. Intelligence predicts the Vazroth will hit it within 72 hours. They have been targeting stations with ancient predecessor ruins, excavating sites that most species consider too dangerous to explore. Nexus Station has extensive ruins in its lower levels, sealed off after an expedition disappeared 2 centuries ago." Sarah Chen studied the tactical display with intensity that made her brown eyes seem to glow. "What is the Vazroth endgame? They are not just consuming for biomass. This is a search pattern." Intelligence Officer Valdez stepped forward, his expression grim. "We believe they are looking for something called the Seed. Decrypted Vazroth communications reference it repeatedly. We think it is predecessor technology, possibly a weapon or control system. If the Vazroth acquire it, they could become unstoppable." Webb examined the station schematics with the eye of someone who saw every structure as a potential weapon. Station defenses are minimal, built for research, not combat. If the Vazroth commit their usual assault numbers, we are looking at waves, of bioships that will overwhelm fixed positions through attrition. Then we do not fight from fixed positions, Sarah said simply. We turn the entire station into a weapon. We make them pay for every corridor, every room, every meter they advance. We do not hold territory. We bleed them until reinforcements arrive. Dr. Okonkwo was reviewing medical supplies with systematic precision. Commander, if the Vazroth breach the civilian sectors, we will face mass casualties. Their parasitic organisms can infect any carbon-based life form. Once infected, the host has approximately 4 hours before complete neural takeover. We need to evacuate non-combatants before engagement begins. Jin Park spoke for the first time, his voice quiet, but carrying absolute certainty. Evacuation will cause panic. The station population includes species that have never experienced warfare. They will resist leaving their homes even with the Vazroth approaching. We need to make them understand the danger without triggering mass hysteria. General Cross looked at each team member in turn. You understand the stakes. You understand the risks. The galaxy is watching. They are terrified of the Vazroth, but they are also terrified of us. We need to show them that humans fight for something that matters. We protect. We save. We give everything we have to defend those who cannot defend themselves. That is what makes us different from the monsters. Sarah Chen stood, her voice carrying command authority despite her relatively junior rank. Eclipse Squad, prepare for deployment. We launch in 90 minutes aboard the Phantom's Edge. Gear check in 30. No one dies today except the enemy. The stealth carrier Phantom's Edge was built for speed and infiltration, a sleek vessel that could outrun most conventional ships and disappear from sensors through adaptive camouflage. Its interior was purely functional, every surface dedicated to mission efficiency. Elena Vasquez watched from Unity Station as the ship launched from lunar orbit, accelerating to velocities that would have liquefied most galactic species through sheer G-force stress. Humans could endure because Earth's gravity had made them durable. As the Phantom's Edge disappeared into the darkness between stars, Elena felt the weight of her decision. She had invited the Deathworlders to war. She had unleashed humanity's capacity for violence. Now the galaxy would learn whether humans were saviors or simply another threat. The answer would be written in blood and fire on the hull of Nexus Station. The Battle of Nexus Station hung in the void like a flower of steel and glass, its modular construction spreading across 12 kilometers of interconnected habitation rings, research facilities, and docking pylons. From a distance it looked peaceful, even beautiful. Up close, Sarah Chen could see the cracks in that facade. The station had been built for science, not survival. Its hull was thin composite material designed for radiation shielding, not combat. Its defensive systems consisted of 3-point defense turrets meant to handle micrometeorites, not bioships. The Phantom's Edge docked at the main airlock 36 hours ahead of the projected Vazroth arrival. Station Administrator Kelvor met them at the entrance, his insectoid frame trembling with conflicting emotions. He was Canthier, a species known for brilliant engineering and absolute pacifism. His compound eyes reflected Eclipse Squad in fragmented images, and Sarah could read his terror in every twitching antenna. Administrator Kelvor, Sarah said, keeping her voice calm and professional. I am Lieutenant Sarah Chen, commanding Eclipse Squad. We are here to protect Nexus Station and evacuate civilians before the Vazroth arrive. Kelvor's mandibles clicked nervously. You are human. The Deathworlders. I have seen your combat footage. You fight with terrible efficiency. Is it true that your species finds violence enjoyable? Marcus Webb stepped forward, his scarred hands visible even through his combat suit. Some humans find violence exciting, Administrator. Personally, I find it necessary. There is a difference. We did not choose to be good at warfare. Our planet chose it for us. But we also did not choose to abandon those who need help. So here we are. Dr. Okonkwo moved past the men, her medical scanner already active as she surveyed the civilian population moving through the concourse. Administrator, I need complete access to your medical facilities and population registry. I need to know which species are present, their biological vulnerabilities, and evacuation priorities. Children and elderly first, then anyone with mobility limitations. Kelvor's terror warred with desperate hope. You truly intend to protect us? Not just secure the station for Earth? Sarah met his compound eyes directly. We protect. That is what we do. That is why they sent us. Now please, we have limited time. The Vazroth will not wait for us to be ready. The next 18 hours were organized chaos. Marcus Webb moved through the station like a force of nature, identifying structural weaknesses and reinforcing them with materials never intended for combat use. He converted research equipment into improvised explosives, turned scientific instruments into sensors, and transformed entire sections of corridor into kill zones. His work made the civilian engineers uncomfortable. They had spent their lives creating, and now they watched a human systematically prepare their home for destruction. Jin Park disappeared into the ventilation systems and maintenance corridors, mapping every passage, every shortcut, every blind spot. He moved like smoke, appearing and vanishing before station security could track him. When Kelvor complained about the intrusion, Sarah simply said, we need to know every route the Vazroth might use. Jin is ensuring we have no surprises. Dr. Okonkwo established a triage center in the medical bay and began organizing evacuation ships. The civilian population resisted. Families did not want to leave their homes. Researchers refused to abandon years of work. A Pelvorian scientist named Dravik confronted her directly, his tentacles coiled in anger. You humans always resort to violence. Have you even attempted to communicate with the Vazroth, to understand their motivations? Amara looked at him with exhaustion born from treating too many casualties in previous conflicts. Dr. Dravik, the Vazroth have consumed 4 worlds. 12 million beings have been converted into biomass. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They consume. If you want to try talking to them when they arrive, I will not stop you, but I will save everyone else first. Sarah spent the time studying the station's lower levels, where the ancient predecessor ruins lay sealed behind blast doors. The ruins were a mystery that haunted galactic civilization. Millions of years ago, an advanced species had built installations across hundreds of worlds, then vanished without explanation. Their technology was far beyond anything current species could create. Most predecessor sites were considered too dangerous to explore. Nexus Station had been built around one of the largest known ruins, but after researchers disappeared during excavations, the site had been permanently sealed. Sarah overrode the security locks and descended into darkness. The ruins were vast, stretching deep into the asteroid that formed Nexus Station's foundation. The walls were smooth black material that absorbed light, and the corridors twisted in geometries that hurt to perceive. At the center of the complex, Sarah found what the Vazroth were searching for. The seed hung suspended in a stasis field, a sphere of crystalline material that pulsed with internal light. It was beautiful and terrifying, clearly artificial but alien in ways that made human perception struggle. Sarah activated her communicator. Dr. Okonkwo, I need you in the lower ruins. I found it. I found the seed. Amara arrived 20 minutes later, her xenobiologist training immediately engaged. She circled the artifact with scientific fascination warring against tactical awareness. This is predecessor technology, active despite millions of years of dormancy. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. If the Vazroth are searching for this, it must represent significant power. Can we use it? Sarah asked bluntly. Can we weaponize it against them? Before Amara could answer, alarms shrieked throughout the station. Jin Park's voice crackled over the communication channel, calm despite the emergency. Commander, we have Vazroth scouts. 3 bioships, small class. They are early. I am engaging. Sarah and Amara sprinted back through the ruins toward the upper levels. Through her tactical display, Sarah watched Jin's combat feed. He moved through zero gravity with inhuman grace, his magnetic boots allowing him to shift between surfaces that conventional thinking would call walls and ceiling. The Vazroth scouts were organic nightmares, all teeth and claws and acidic secretions. Jin killed them with precise efficiency, his combat blade finding vital points with surgical accuracy. The entire engagement lasted 90 seconds. 3 Vazroth dead. Jin Park breathing hard but uninjured. The station population witnessed the combat through security feeds. Sarah heard their reactions over the open channels. Horror. Disgust. A Morvani peacekeeper named Salira spoke, her voice shaking. He killed them without hesitation. Without mercy. Is this what humanity calls protection? Murder with efficiency? Sarah activated the general communication channel, her voice carrying to every corridor and chamber. This is Lieutenant Chen. What you just witnessed was Corporal Park eliminating hostiles that would have torn through this station, killing everyone they encountered. The Vazroth do not surrender. They do not retreat. They consume. What you call murder, we call survival. If that disturbs you, I understand. But those scouts were the vanguard. The main swarm arrives in 6 hours. So you have a choice. Trust us to protect you using methods that make you uncomfortable, or try to defend yourselves using diplomacy against an enemy that views you as food. The silence that followed was heavy with realization. Kelvor finally spoke, his mandibles clicking in what Sarah recognized as Canthier resignation. We trust you, Lieutenant. We have no other choice. The Vazroth swarm emerged from hyperspace exactly when Sarah predicted. 40 bioships ranging from small scout vessels to massive capital ships that dwarfed Nexus Station. They moved with horrifying coordination, a living fleet that operated as a single organism. Their strategy was simple and brutal. Overwhelm through numbers, breach the hull in multiple locations, flood the interior with parasitic organisms. Marcus Webb waited until they entered the kill zone he had spent hours preparing. Then he activated his improvised minefield. Dozens of research reactors, converted into explosive devices and hidden throughout the surrounding space, detonated simultaneously. The blast destroyed 6 bioships immediately and severely damaged 12 more. The Vazroth swarm hesitated, their hive mind processing this unexpected resistance. Sarah used that hesitation. Fire everything. Point defense turrets, emergency thrusters, vented atmosphere. Anything that creates thrust or damage. Make them think we have real weapons. The station's pathetic defensive systems opened fire. 3 ancient point defense turrets managed to destroy 1 small bioship before overheating. It was almost comical compared to the remaining Vazroth force, but it bought time. Time for the remaining civilians to reach evacuation ships. Time for Eclipse Squad to prepare the next phase. The Vazroth adapted. They always adapted. The remaining bioships split into 3 groups, approaching from different vectors to divide the defenders' attention. They launched boarding pods, organic missiles that latched onto the hull and began burning through with acidic secretions. Jin Park moved through the ventilation systems, appearing at breach points to eliminate Vazroth warriors before they could establish positions. His combat feeds showed nightmare creatures dying in showers of ichor and gunfire. Dr. Okonkwo operated from the medical bay, treating wounded civilians and station security while directing evacuation procedures. A Vazroth breakthrough reached the medical wing. Amara found herself standing between wounded Pelvorians and 3 Vazroth warriors, her medical scanner in one hand and a borrowed plasma cutter in the other. She had 3 seconds to process the absurdity of using a surgical tool as a weapon. Then training took over. She killed all 3 warriors, her movements economical and precise. The wounded civilians stared at her with new understanding. The human doctor who had been so gentle while treating their injuries had just killed without hesitation to protect them. Marcus Webb led a fighting retreat through the station's commercial sector, turning shops and restaurants into ambush points. His demolitions work paid dividends. Every corridor the Vazroth advanced through became a death trap. Explosive charges, improvised flamethrowers using industrial equipment, even simple pressure-sealed doors that could be opened to vent entire sections into space. The Vazroth kept coming, but they paid in blood for every meter. Sarah Chen coordinated the defense from the command center, her mind processing data streams from multiple sources simultaneously. She could see the pattern. The Vazroth were not trying to hold territory. They were pushing toward the lower levels, toward the predecessor ruins, toward the seed. She activated her communicator. All units fall back to the ruins entrance. We make our final stand there. If the Vazroth want the seed, they go through us first. Eclipse Squad assembled at the blast doors leading to the predecessor complex. Around them, 24 station security personnel and a handful of civilian volunteers took positions. They were armed with whatever weapons could be improvised from scientific equipment. They were terrified but determined. They had watched humans fight and learned something about refusing to surrender. The Vazroth came in a flood of organic horror, hundreds of warriors pouring through the station's compromised sections. The battle at the ruins entrance was brutal close-quarters combat. Jin Park's blade flashed in darkness. Marcus Webb's explosives created zones of destruction. Dr. Okonkwo moved between fighters, stabilizing wounds and pushing people back into combat-ready condition. Sarah Chen stood at the center, her sidearms speaking with methodical precision. They were losing. For all their skill and determination, Eclipse Squad was 4 humans against hundreds of Vazroth. Station security was brave but untrained for this level of violence. The Vazroth pushed closer, their acidic secretions melting through barricades, their numbers overwhelming defensive positions through sheer mass. Sarah made her decision. She grabbed the seed from its stasis field, feeling the artifact pulse in her hands like a living thing. Dr. Okonkwo, you said this device contains unknown energy signatures. Can we overload it? Turn it into a weapon? Amara's eyes widened in understanding. The Vazroth are a hive mind. They operate on a shared neural network. If we could broadcast a disruptive signal through their biological communications, it might create cascade failure across their entire local swarm. Do it, Sarah ordered. Whatever it takes. As Amara worked frantically to weaponize predecessor technology, the Vazroth pressed their final assault. Marcus Webb stood in a choke point, firing his weapon until it overheated, then drawing his combat blade and simply refusing to let the enemy pass. Jin Park fought with bleeding wounds, his movement slowing but never stopping. Sarah emptied her last magazine, dropped the useless weapon, and drew her knife. If this was humanity's last stand, they would make it memorable. Then the seed activated. Dr. Okonkwo had succeeded in overloading its containment protocols, releasing a pulse of energy that hit the Vazroth hive mind like a hammer. Across Nexus Station, Vazroth warriors convulsed and died as their neural network collapsed. The bioships in surrounding space lost cohesion, their organic systems shutting down simultaneously. Sarah Chen stood among the carnage, bleeding from a dozen wounds, and watched humanity's reinforcements arrive. General Cross's battle group emerged from hyperspace, massive warships that eclipsed the dying Vazroth fleet. It was over. Nexus Station was saved. 50,000 civilians had survived because 4 humans refused to quit. But Sarah knew the real battle was just beginning. The galaxy had watched Eclipse Squad fight. They had seen human warfare up close. Now came the judgment. Trembling stars. The aftermath of Nexus Station left the civilian sectors looking like a war zone from humanity's bloody history. Bulkheads were torn open, corridors scorched black from explosive damage, and the metallic smell of Vazroth ichor mixed with the acrid stench of burned composite materials. Eclipse Squad moved through the wreckage on autopilot, their bodies running on adrenaline fumes and stubbornness. Sarah Chen had taken shrapnel in her left shoulder. Marcus Webb's hands were burned from handling overheated weapons. Jin Park had 3 broken ribs from a Vazroth warrior that had gotten too close. Dr. Amara Okonkwo had been operating for 16 straight hours and could barely stand. General Caden, Cross found them in the ruins entrance, standing guard over the seed despite their injuries. He was a career soldier who had seen humanity's worst conflicts, but even he felt pride at what these 4 had accomplished. Casualty report, he said quietly. Sarah's voice was hoarse from shouting orders. Eclipse Squad, 4 wounded but operational. Station security, 18 casualties, 11 dead. Civilian population, 387 wounded, 62 dead from Vazroth parasitic infection before we could evacuate them. Given the odds, we got lucky, sir. Lucky, Cross repeated, looking at the thousands of dead Vazroth littering the corridors. You held a civilian station with 4 soldiers against a swarm that destroyed entire fleets. That is not luck, Lieutenant. That is excellence. But Cross also understood the political firestorm that was brewing. The battle had been broadcast across the Meridian Collective. Every species in the Alliance had watched human warfare in real time. The footage showed Eclipse Squad executing tactics that most galactic species considered barbaric. Using explosives in civilian areas, converting research equipment into weapons, fighting with a level of aggression that seemed excessive even when facing existential threats. The galaxy was talking, and not all of it was praise. Administrator Kelvor approached them, his compound eyes reflecting the destruction around them. He moved carefully, his insectoid frame still trembling, but there was something different in his posture. Lieutenant Chen, I need to speak with you privately. They moved to an observation deck that had somehow survived intact. Through the transparent aluminum, they could see the debris field where 127 Vazroth bioships had died. Kelvor's antennae twitched in what Sarah had learned to recognize as Canther emotional processing. Before you arrived, I was terrified of humans. I had heard the stories. The violence. The aggression. The capacity for cruelty. I believed you were only marginally better than the monsters you fought. Sarah waited, too tired to defend humanity's reputation yet again. Kelvor continued, his mandibles clicking softly. Then I watched Dr. Okonkwo shield Pelvorian children with her own body when Vazroth warriors breached the medical bay. I watched Corporal Park refuse to abandon wounded station security, even when retreat was the tactically sound choice. I watched Chief Webb jury-rig life support systems while under fire because he knew civilians were trapped in sealed sections. And I watched you, Lieutenant, standing at the ruins entrance knowing you would die there if necessary to buy evacuation time. What is your point, Administrator? Sarah asked. My point is that I was wrong, Kelvor said simply. Humans are violent. Humans are dangerous. But you are not cruel. You fight to protect, not to conquer. You risk everything to save people you have never met. That capacity for selfless violence is something my species cannot comprehend, but I am grateful it exists. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you, Administrator. That means more than you know. But Kelvor's relief was not shared across the Meridian Collective. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Unity Council 3 days after Nexus Station, facing accusations that felt like a trial. The chamber was packed with delegates and the mood was hostile. The holographic displays showed edited footage from the battle, focusing on the most violent moments. Marcus Webb's explosives tearing through Vazroth warriors, Jin Park's blade work in zero gravity, Sarah Chen executing wounded Vazroth that could no longer fight. The Arxian representative spoke first, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. Ambassador Vasquez, the Council authorized human military intervention to save lives. What we witnessed was slaughter. Your soldiers used excessive force. They created weapons from civilian equipment. They fought with apparent enjoyment of violence. This is not protection. This is barbarity wearing a civilized mask. Elena stood calmly despite the anger directed at her. Representative, let me be very clear about what you witnessed. Eclipse Squad faced a swarm that had consumed 4 worlds. They were outnumbered 300 to 1. Conventional tactics would have failed within minutes. So they used unconventional tactics. They improvised. They adapted. They did whatever was necessary to keep 50,000 civilians alive. If that makes you uncomfortable, I understand. But everyone on Nexus Station survived because my soldiers refused to quit. A Morvani delegate stood, his bioluminescence pulsing angry red. Your soldiers killed wounded Vazroth. We have footage of Lieutenant Chen executing creatures that were no longer threats. That is a war crime by our standards. Dr. Okonkwo's voice cut through the chamber via communication link from Nexus Station's medical bay. This is Dr. Amara Okonkwo. I treated 17 civilians who were infected by Vazroth parasites. The creatures burrow into the host's neural tissue and begin converting organic matter into more Vazroth. The process takes 4 hours and is unimaginably painful. There is no cure. The only mercy we can offer is a quick death before the transformation completes. Every wounded Vazroth represents a potential infection vector. Lieutenant Chen was not executing helpless enemies. She was preventing them from infecting more civilians. If that offends your sensibilities, I invite you to treat Vazroth infections yourself and explain to the host why you are letting them suffer. The chamber fell silent. Elena pressed the advantage. The Meridian Collective asked for humanity's help. We provided it. We saved Nexus Station. We recovered predecessor technology that gives us a weapon against the Vazroth. We did this with 4 soldiers and determination. Now you want to condemn us for being too good at violence? For using methods that make you uncomfortable? I will make you a deal. Give us 24 hours to train your military forces in human tactics. If after that training you still believe we are barbaric monsters, we will withdraw from the collective and you can face the Vazroth alone. High Counselor Thyra raised her 6 arms for silence. Ambassador Vasquez, you ask us to embrace violence as a solution. That goes against everything the Meridian Collective represents. We built this alliance on principles of peace and cooperation. And those principles have saved millions of lives over centuries, Elena agreed. but they cannot save you from the Vazroth. The swarm does not care about your philosophies. They do not honor peace treaties. They consume, so you have a choice. Adapt or die, learn from the Death Worlders or become extinct. I am not asking you to become human. I am asking you to survive. The vote was scheduled for the following week. In that time, General Cross implemented emergency military training across the collective's defense forces. Human instructors were deployed to military academies on 20 different worlds. The training was brutal by galactic standards. Alien cadets were pushed to physical and mental limits they did not know they possessed. Species that had never held weapons were taught to kill efficiently. Civilizations that measured their history in peaceful millennia were forced to confront their capacity for violence. The results were mixed. Some species adapted quickly, discovering warrior traditions buried in their genetic memory. The Canthir, despite their pacifist philosophy, proved to have excellent spatial reasoning that translated into tactical brilliance. The Morvani, once they overcame their moral objections, demonstrated impressive coordination in squad-level combat. But other species struggled. The Pelvorians physically could not handle human weapons. Their tentacles lacked the strength to operate firearms designed for primate musculature. Sarah Chen worked directly with alien commanders, teaching them principles that felt fundamental to humans but alien to species that had evolved without predators. Aggression is not inherently evil, she explained to a classroom of terrified cadets. It is a tool. A hammer can build a house or crush a skull. The morality comes from the wielder, not the weapon. We are teaching you to be hammers that build and protect. One Selkari officer named Kryvax asked the question many were thinking. Lieutenant, how do you live with it? The killing. The violence. Humans have been warriors for your entire history. Does it not haunt you? Sarah's answer was honest. Every night, I dream about the people I have killed. I remember their faces. I carry their weight. But I also remember the people I saved. The civilians who lived because I was willing to do what was necessary. That does not make the nightmares go away, but it gives them meaning. We do not fight because we love violence. We fight because we love what violence protects. The vote finally came. The Unity Council chamber was packed with representatives and the tension was suffocating. High Counselor Thyra presented the motion formally. The Meridian Collective faces existential threat from the Vazroth swarm. Human military intervention at Nexus Station proved effective but employed methods many species find morally troubling. This vote will determine humanity's role in our defense. Option 1. Earth becomes a permanent member of the Meridian Defense Fleet with full authority to train and command Allied forces. Option 2. Earth withdraws from military involvement and the Collective faces the Vazroth using conventional methods. The vote was not close. 49 species voted for Option 1, 12 voted for Option 2, 6 abstained. The decision was made. Humanity would lead the Collective's military defense. But General Cross understood this was not just a military victory. It was a test of whether violent species and peaceful species could coexist. He made his position clear in his acceptance speech. The Meridian Collective has honored us with tremendous responsibility. We will not abuse that trust. Human forces will operate under strict codes of conduct. We will respect your laws and your cultures. We will use violence only when necessary, and always in defense of the innocent. But we will also demand that you face reality. The galaxy is dangerous. Peace is maintained by the willingness to fight for it. We are not asking you to become warriors. We are asking you to support those who fight on your behalf. The final confrontation came 6 months later. The combined Meridian human fleet, now 300 warships strong with crews trained in human tactics, faced the Vazroth home swarm at the edge of the Abyss Nebula. The enemy fleet was massive, 5,000 bioships that had consumed 100 worlds. It should have been a massacre. The Vazroth had numerical superiority, biological adaptation, and millions of years of evolutionary optimization for conquest. But they faced an enemy that had something they could not comprehend. The Vazroth were a hive mind, perfect coordination through biological networking. The Meridian forces had learned to fight as humans fight. Independent units making split-second decisions, adapting faster than any hive mind could process. Sarah Chen commanded a strike group of Canthir and Morvani pilots who executed hit and run tactics that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Marcus Webb coordinated demolition teams that included Selkari engineers creating explosive traps with creativity, that rivaled human ingenuity. Jin Park trained infiltration specialists from a dozen species, teaching them to move through enemy territory like ghosts. And Dr. Amara Okonkwo had weaponized the Seed. The predecessor artifact broadcast a neural disruption signal that tore through the Vazroth hive mind. Like a virus through a computer network, bioships lost cohesion. Swarm tactics collapsed into chaos. The ancient enemy that had consumed 100 worlds discovered they had awakened something far more dangerous than themselves. A galaxy of peaceful species, trained and led by Deathworlders. A civilization that had learned to fight not because they loved violence, but because they loved what violence protected. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the Vazroth home swarm was destroyed. The ancient threat was broken. The Meridian Collective had survived. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on Unity Station, watching the victory celebrations across 100 worlds. Species that had never known warfare now understood its necessity. Civilizations that had feared humanity now respected them. The Deathworlders had not conquered the galaxy. They had saved it. High Counselor Thyra approached, her silver scales reflecting the celebration lights. Ambassador, I must apologize. We invited you into our conflict fearing you were monsters barely controlled. We were wrong. Humans are not monsters. You are guardians who have seen enough horror to recognize evil, and enough suffering to value compassion. Elena smiled, feeling the weight of 18 years of diplomatic struggle finally lifting. High Counselor, humanity learned something from this alliance as well. We learned that strength is not just the capacity for violence. It is knowing when to use that capacity and when to find another way. You taught us that. We taught you how to fight. Together we became something neither species could have achieved alone. As the celebrations continued, General Cross found Eclipse Squad in a quiet observation deck. They were exhausted, scarred, and haunted by months of constant warfare. But they were alive. They had done their duty. They had protected the innocent. Sarah Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about humanity's journey from a death world to the guardians of a galactic civilization. We made the stars tremble, she said quietly. Not through conquest. Through protection. That is what Deathworlders do, General Cross said. We survive, we adapt. We protect. And when necessary, we fight so that others do not have to. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's capacity for violence, but they had also learned to trust it. The Deathworlders had deployed. The stars had trembled, and civilization had survived because of it.